Howdy guys, welcome back to Deal by Deal episode number 9, and I've got a treat for you today. We're going to be talking about the number one deal that was a failure for me over the last 80 deals I did. This is the only one I consider to be a loss, so we're going to be going over all the details on how we screwed up, how we could have made this a good investment, because it was a good investment. It was operator error. We did everything wrong. So this property was a 7,000 square foot building with 2 large residences and a lot of shop space. So it was a mixed use building in fairly rough condition at a pretty low price per square foot for the area. It looked like a scream of a deal. So the year here was 2011, just like episode 8 that we just did, which was the mobile home, the cabin on land. And so what we'd actually done is we put in an offer for this mixed use property, and we put in kind of a lowball offer with owner financing, and they turned us down without even countering. And so we kept on the hunt, and then we went and found deal number 8 and put it under contract. Well, then they came back to us on this one a few weeks later before we closed on the other one and said, hey, we've reconsidered, we'd probably accept that offer. Now that offer was a low offer as far as terms. The terms on owner financing were very reasonable, with only like 2% down or something, maybe more than that, but it wasn't enough down payment to cover the closing costs. So the seller was going to have to bring closing costs to the table. The problem though was that we actually had earmarked that money to buy deal number 8 for a down payment on that one, and we knew there'd be some fix-up costs on that. You can watch that video if you missed it. And so they came back and accepted this offer. We thought it was an awesome deal, but we're gonna have to scrounge for some cash and figure out how to make that happen, which we did. But it put us kind of in a financial pinch, which made us make some bad decisions for both placing tenants and also during our due diligence period. So that was pretty rough and a pretty big mistake that we didn't do proper due diligence on this larger building. So the biggest thing that we messed up on our due diligence is that we didn't have a formal home inspection. We had some contractors that we know come take a look, and they were good, but they're just not as thorough as a home inspector to come take a look at everything on this property, and there were things that were missed. We also didn't have a septic inspection, which was ridiculous because this was a big building, and it was, the septic did eventually fail. It was like a $20,000 failure, and it was pretty horrible to deal with that. There was also some roof leaking, and we knew there was a lot of stuff wrong with this property, but the septic was the biggest blind side. And then there was just constant maintenance because it was an older building, so it really cost us a lot more to own this property than we thought it would. The other big part of the due diligence that we screwed up is we thought we could rent the shop space for so much per square footage, and we thought that by looking at some comparable shop space, but we had never landlorded or rented shop space before, so we didn't know that it wasn't quite as comparable as we thought. The big problem with the shop space that was downstairs was that if you have it below your residences, it has to be like within reasonable hours and not have too much noise to bother the upstairs. But the biggest thing is this was kind of a normal height garage. I don't remember exactly, but when you're renting shop space, people want to put equipment and bigger trucks and things in there that just didn't fit in this. So we had several thousand square feet of shop space that really wasn't as marketable as we thought it was. So we ended up renting it for quite a bit less, and we had a lot more vacancy than we thought. A little bit of the same problem for the residences who didn't want to live above a shop space, is that they didn't want to pay as much as we thought, but not so bad. But the shop space was just a lot harder to rent than we thought. So what we did right on the property was negotiated a good price and terms, and if we'd have done proper due diligence, we could have came back and renegotiated over things like the septic and some bigger items. And so this property did have potential to be a great investment. We just screwed it up. We really messed up with our property management also, which we'll get to in a minute. But one other thing that we did awesome is once we got it under contract, we wanted to rent it out as soon as possible. So because it was vacant. So we got permission from the seller to advertise it for tenants, and even were able to place 2 tenants for the 2 residential units. As a 3 and 4 bedroom. We placed 2 tenants in the property before closing, and we actually used the first month's rent for the 2 units as part of the money that we brought to closing, because it ended up being thousands of dollars worth of rent that we got them placed right before closing. So that was a pretty cool trick. But as far as the ongoing management, we hadn't been landlords for very long. A lot of our properties we had flipped and stuff, so we didn't do good due diligence on our tenants, and we didn't kick them out when they quit paying. We made some pretty bad decisions on tenants and how to manage them. And of course, when you're short on money, you make more money mistakes. One time when we had a tenant turnover, we had a group of kids who wanted to rent this place as a big roommate situation. It was a 4-bedroom. There was 4 or 5 of them, and I just knew from talking to these folks, these were not going to be quality tenants. They just they weren't responsible. They all worked very low-end jobs. I knew that the roommate situation, they'd be coming and going and inviting other people. I knew that it would be a bad idea to let them in. But there the guy stood with, this wad of cash, and we kind of needed it. So the lesson there was, never put yourself in a position where you need to take rent from somebody that is going to be a bad idea. And of course that did not end well. Some tenants came and went. Pretty soon the place is full of a bunch of kids that aren't on the lease, and I've never met them, and nobody's paying, and had to take them all to eviction court, and they did a bunch of damage, and one of those landlording horror stories, but really that could have been prevented by me doing a better job as a landlord. So that one hurt, and I'm a lot better landlord after that. So we owned the property about 5 years, and we did make some money. It cash flowed pretty good, but we did end up putting just a lot of money back into, there was a roof issue that we had to have repaired a couple times. There was the $20,000 septic, and we put in a garage door, and we had electrical work done, and the list goes on and on. Got to the point where this was not a financial drain, it was just an absolute emotional drain. Every time the phone rang and it was a tenant, I just hated it, because it was always something, and that is not a good position to be in. So we decided to sell it. The property was a difficult property to sell because of the type of property it was. And so we offered owner financing on it and sold it for $291. I think we bought it for $240 or $250. So we sold it for a little bit more than we bought it for, and we cash flowed a reasonable amount, just not reasonable for the amount of work and effort and stress that we had into the deal. The problem was we sold it on owner financing and we didn't have it paid off. So the original owner let the new buyer assume that first position lien, and we took a second position lien on it, which we knew was a precarious situation, but it was worth it to us to get out of that piece of property. And so we took the second position lien, and unfortunately the buyer did eventually fail after I think a couple of years. And so we owned it for 5 years, the new buyer owned it for a couple of years, quit making the payments, both to us, but more importantly to the first position lien. And the first position lien holder came back and foreclosed on it. We had an opportunity at that time to step in and try to save our equity. Wasn't a huge amount because we'd gotten a little bit of a down payment and some payments. So we had an opportunity to come in and try to save it, but emotionally I did not want to be involved with that property again. So it was kind of a cut your losses type of situation and just walk away. And so our equity position in that we were collecting on did get wiped out, and we chose not to save it. And so that was a very tough decision to make, to not get re-involved in that property. But in hindsight, it was 100% the best decision, because that property was such an emotional drain and such a stressor. I think when we calculate all the money in and all the money out on that, we did not lose money, or didn't lose much money, but man, we lost a lot of sleep. So out of all the deals I've done, this is the only deal that I consider to be a loser. However, we did learn a lot. We learned a lot about property management. We learned a lot about due diligence, how to pick and screen tenants. And, I think we were able to apply a lot of those lessons that we learned over the 5 years that we had that property, just to become better investors on everything else we had. And of course, during that time, we're doing a bunch of investments. The outcome of that was not the best, but it could have been a lot worse. Didn't really lose money, and we learned a lot. So at the end of the day, it came out all right. So real estate is very forgiving. Hopefully this didn't scare anybody away from making deals. It just shows them that they need to make sure that they do them right, do their due diligence, and properly manage the properties. I hope you guys learned something from it and enjoyed the one deal by deal I'll be doing where it came out as a failure. So anyways, have a great day. Like and follow all over the place. I've got over 70 more stories coming out, and all of them will be better than this one. Better outcome anyways. Thank you.